The late summer sun was starting to dip, painting everything in that warm, golden light that makes even a simple backyard look special. The air was thick with the smell of charcoal and burgers, and the sound of laughter and easy conversation buzzed like happy insects. For Captain David Cross, this was better than any five-star restaurant. After months in the dust and routine of a deployment overseas, this noisy, chaotic American barbecue was pure paradise. He leaned against a fence post, a cold beer sweating in his hand, just watching. Kids shrieked as they ran through a sprinkler. Someone argued good-naturedly about the best way to grill corn. He took a deep breath, savoring the smell of cut grass and sunscreen. This was what he had thought about while lying on his cot thousands of miles away. Just normal life. His friend, another Marine he'd served with, clapped him on the shoulder. "You look lost, Captain." "Too quiet for you?" David grinned. "Just storing it all up. This is the good stuff." His friend nodded towards a small group standing near the picnic table. "Come on, let me introduce you to some people. My sister's here with a few of her friends. They're good people." David let himself be steered over. The group was a couple of teachers, a nurse, a guy who worked in tech. The introductions were a blur of names and handshakes. His focus, however, slowly settled on one in the group. She wasn't the loudest, but she had a way of listening that made you feel like you were the only person talking. When she did speak, it was with a calm, clear thoughtfulness. Her name was Maya Dot. The conversation flowed easily from the terrible traffic downtown to a new movie everyone was talking about. David found himself relaxing into it, the familiar weight of command lifting from his shoulders. He was just Dave here. He traded stories with the tech guy about the worst food they'd ever eaten, earning a round of groans and laughter. His eyes met Maya's as she told a short, funny story about a mix-up at her work. Her smile was genuine, and her eyes had a quick, intelligent light to them. There was a steadiness about her, a kind of quiet confidence that felt familiar in a way he couldn't quite place. It wasn't the boisterous confidence of his fellow Marines, but something deeper, like a stone at the bottom of a fast-moving stream, Dot feeling comfortable and falling into the kind of light-hearted interrogation he used with new recruits to break the ice. He turned to her with a playful grin. "So, Maya," he began, taking a sip of his beer, "in a crowd like this, everyone's got a story. I've got a theory that everyone has a nickname, too. One that tells you who they really are." She raised an eyebrow, a slight smile on her lips. "Oh, you do you?" "Absolutely," he said, warming to the game. "Let me guess. Based on my expert observation?" He made a show of looking her up and down thoughtfully. "You seem like a Smiley. Or maybe a Chief. You've got that 'I know what I'm doing' vibe." The others in the group chuckled. Maya just shook her head, her smile still in place. "Not even close." "Come on," David prodded, his voice full of friendly challenge. "You gotta give me something. I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours. It's only fair." He leaned in a little. "Back in my pilot training days, they called me Crosswalk, because I was always very deliberate. Straight line from A to B. It was a silly nickname from a lifetime ago, and it got the laugh he was hoping for." Maya looked at him, and for a second, that steady gaze seemed to look past Dave at the barbecue and see something else entirely. The laughter from the group faded into the background hum of the party. She held his joking gaze, and her own smile softened, not disappearing, but changing. It became something more knowing, almost weary. The surrounding chatter, the sizzle of the grill, the kids yelling, the classic rock song playing from a speaker, it all seemed to get quieter, as if someone had turned the volume down on the world. David's playful expression was still fixed on his face, waiting for her to play along. She didn't play along. Instead, she spoke two words. Just two simple words, clear and calm, that cut through the summer air like winter wind. Sticky 6. The effect was instant and total. David's own grin, wide and easy just a heartbeat before, stiffened and then shattered. A cold jolt, like a bucket of ice water had been dumped down his back, replaced the warm contentment in his chest. The cold beer bottle in his hand suddenly felt like a lead weight. His fingers tightened around the glass. The color seemed to drain from the vibrant scene around him. The golden light felt harsh. The laughter sounded distant and strange. Sticky 6. Those two words were not just a name. They were a key that unlocked a door he kept locked deep inside himself. A door that led back to a place of scorching heat, deafening noise, and the coppery smell of blood. They were the radio call sign from the single worst, most chaotic, most desperate day of his life. His mind, against his will, was already there. He was no longer in a sunny backyard. He was back in that ragged, dusty valley, the air thick with smoke and the sharp crack of gunfire. He could hear the panicked shouts of his men, the choked radio calls for help, and then, cutting through the static, the beautiful, terrifying sound of rotor blades. The Black Hawk helicopter that had descended into that nightmare wasn't just a machine. It was a lifeline. Its call sign had been repeated over the radio 100 times that day. Sticky 6. He remembered the bird hovering. A massive, vulnerable target, its skids dipping into the chaos as his wounded Marines were dragged towards it. He remembered the dirt and mud kicking up in violent whirlwinds, and how the lower parts of the helicopter were streaked with dark, grimy red. Sticky indeed. He had never seen the pilot's face. He only knew the voice over the radio calm professional, focused, and the incredible courage it represented. And now, here, holding a plate with a half-eaten burger, stood a woman who had just claimed that name. This calm, smiling woman at a barbecue was that voice. She was the pilot who had flown into hell to pull his men out. The joke was over. The game was finished. All the air seemed to leave his lungs. All he could manage was one raw, stunned word. His voice barely above a whisper, stripped of all its earlier humor. You. The word hung in the air between them, a single, heavy syllable that carried a world of meaning. David saw Maya's face change. Her calm expression didn't break, but it deepened, as if she had been waiting for this moment, half expecting it, for a very long time. She gave him a slow, small nod. It wasn't a nod of greeting. It was an acknowledgement, a confirmation that the noisy, happy backyard party seemed to warp around David. The children's laughter sounded far away, tinny and unreal. The smell of barbecue, so delicious a minute ago, now felt sickly sweet and thick in his throat. He was looking at Maya, but he wasn't seeing her. He was seeing the dark outline of a helicopter against a dusty, smoke-hazed sky. He was hearing the thump, thump, thump of the blades, fighting to hold steady in the turbulent. Hot air. Someone in their group, a friendly guy with glasses, oblivious to the earthquake that had just happened, tried to restart the conversation. Sticky 6? What's that? Like a basketball thing? Or a band? He chuckled, looking between them for an explanation. David didn't even hear him. Maya did. She gently turned her head towards the man, her voice still amazingly steady. It's an old inside joke from a past job. A really long time ago. She delivered the line so smoothly, with such a practiced ease, that the man just nodded, accepting it, and turned to grab another chip from the bowl. It was a lie, of course. A peaceful civilian lie to protect the bubble of the barbecue. David knew that kind of lie. He'd told 100 versions of it himself. It was just training. It's not a big deal. It's a long story. Lies to keep the dark stuff contained so the normal world could keep spinning. But this lie, coming from her, broke the spell just enough. It brought him back not all the way, but enough to feel the solid ground under his feet, to feel the cool condensation on the beer bottle in his death grip. He realized he was just staring, his mouth slightly open. He must have looked like a complete fool. He finally managed to move, setting the bottle down on a nearby table with a clumsy thunk. The simple action felt difficult, like his limbs weren't quite listening to him. He started, his voice rough. He cleared his throat. Could we talk? For a minute? Maya's eyes softened with something that looked like understanding, and maybe a little pity, which he normally would have hated. But in that moment, he was just grateful for it. Of course, she said simply. She excused herself from the group with a smile that was meant for them, not for him. He watched as she led the way, not towards the crowded patio, but around the side of the house, towards a quieter spot where a couple of old lawn chairs sat under a big oak tree. He followed her, his mind still reeling. He sat down heavily in one of the chairs. The cheap plastic creaked under his weight. Maya sat in the other, folding her hands in her lap. She didn't say anything. She just waited, giving him the space to find his words. The sounds of the party were muffled here, just a distant murmur of joy. David looked at his hands. They were calloused, strong hands, but right now they felt empty and useless. He rubbed his palms on his jeans. He didn't know where to start. The memories were a chaotic jumble flashes of heat and noise and fear. That day, he began, then stopped. He took a shaky breath. In the Sangan Valley? 3 years ago, October. He didn't look at her, but he saw her nod slowly in his peripheral vision. That was you. In the bird. It was, she said softly. Her voice was different now. The casual party tone was gone. It was lower, more direct. It was, he realized with another chill, closer to the voice he'd heard on the radio. You took 3 of my men, he said, the words coming out in a rush. He wasn't talking about the mission report anymore. He was talking about the human beings. A young kid, just a private. His face was... He was so scared. I held pressure on his leg while we waited for you. And my sergeant, the big guy from Texas, he was yelling at everyone, even while he was bleeding, telling them where to shoot. David's own eyes were fixed on a knot in the tree's bark. And my corporal, he wasn't moving at all. We just bundled him up and... He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. He finally risked a glance at her. Maya was looking straight ahead, her jaw set. Her eyes were bright. She was there with him, back in that valley. I remember, she whispered. We had the updates. 3 urgent surgical, 1 critical. We could hear the fight in your voices over the radio. The shooting. It wasn't just background noise. It was. Right there. She turned her head to look at him. My crew chief, he was leaning out the door, his weapon up. The ground was so uneven. We touched down hard twice. He kept shouting back at me, we're not leaving them. 6, we are not leaving them. She repeated the words not with drama, but with a flat, factual tone that made them even more powerful. David felt a lump form in his throat so tight it hurt. He had never known that. He'd been focused on his perimeter, on the enemy, on his wounded. The helicopter was just a machine, a goal to reach. He never let himself think about the people inside it, about their own fear, their own fierce determination. To him, Sticky 6 was a savior, an angel. But angels aren't real. This woman was. She had been terrified too. The bird, he said, almost to himself. It was hit. We saw the sparks along the tail. After you lifted, we saw the damage. Maya gave a short, sharp nod. A few rounds. Nothing vital. The bird flew home. It was a good bird. She said it like someone talking about a loyal horse. The hard part, she continued, her voice dropping, was the waiting. The flight in. Knowing we were heading into it, listening to it get worse on the net. That long minute, just hovering, trying to find the spot, taking the fire, that was the longest part. They sat in silence for a while, listening to a dog bark somewhere down the street. A normal sound. A peaceful sound. The ghost of that other, terrible day began to slowly loosen its grip. It was still there. It would always be there, but it was no longer just his ghost. He was sharing it with the one other person who had been in the exact center of that storm with him. He looked at her, really looked at her, not as a mystery woman at a party, not as an abstract hero, but as a person. He saw the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the quiet strength in her posture. He saw someone who carried the same kind of memories he did, who also had to figure out how to live in a backyard barbecue world after seeing the things she'd seen. "Thank you," he said. The words felt completely inadequate, but they were the only ones he had. For getting them out. For coming. Maya met his gaze and gave him a small, genuine smile, the first one that felt real since they'd sat down. "Thank you," she said back, "for holding that line. For giving us a place to land." It wasn't a happy ending. It was something more real than that. It was an understanding. Two people from opposite sides of the same horrible coin, finding each other in the quiet under a tree, finally putting a face to a memory that had haunted them both. The silence under the oak tree wasn't awkward. It was full. It was the heavy, shared quiet that comes after a truth has been laid bare. David finally took a long, slow breath, feeling the tightness in his chest begin to ease, just a little. The memories were still sharp and painful, but they weren't screaming inside his own head anymore. They were out here, in the space between them. Acknowledged. Maya shifted in her lawn chair, the plastic sighing. "Do you know what happened to them?" she asked. Her voice was gentle. "Your men. After we lifted." David nodded, looking down at his hands again. This part was a little easier to talk about. It had endings, at least. "The kid with the leg wound," he said, a small, real smile touching his lips for the first time since they'd sat down. "He's fine. Got out of the Marines, last I heard. Went back to school. He sends me a message every Veterans Day. Just a simple, 'Thank you, sir,' every year." Maya's face softened with clear relief. "Good," she said, and it sounded like she meant it deeply. "My sergeant from Texas," David continued. "He recovered. Tough as old boots. He stayed in. Actually got promoted. I saw him at a training course last year. He's got a family now. 2 little girls." He paused, the hardest part still to come. "My corporal, he made it to the hospital. He survived the surgery. But his injuries, they were too much. He passed away 2 days later." He said it flatly, the way he had learned to say it to get through the telling. He waited for the usual reaction, the sad shake of the head, the "I'm sorry for your loss," the quick change of subject people often used because they didn't know what else to do. Maya didn't do that. She closed her eyes for just a second. When she opened them, they were shining. "We flew him so fast," she said, almost to herself. "The medic in the back worked on him the whole flight. I pushed that airframe harder than I ever had." She wasn't looking for credit. She was stating a fact, and there was a thread of old frustration in her voice, the frustration of doing everything right, and it still not being enough. "His name was Michael, right?" David's head snapped up. He stared at her. "Yeah," he breathed out, stunned. "Michael. How did you—" "After a mission like that," she said, her gaze distant, "you don't just forget. You can't. I looked it up later. I had to know. I read his name. I saw his picture. He was so young. She looked back at David. I'm sorry we couldn't get him there sooner. I'm sorry we couldn't save him. Something broke open in David then. A dam of solitary grief he hadn't even known he was still holding. For 3 years, he had carried the weight of Michael's death as his own personal command failure. He had replayed every decision, every moment, wondering what he could have done differently. He had never once considered that the pilot of that helicopter might also carry a piece of that weight, that she might also lie awake some nights thinking about the young man who didn't make it. It wasn't your fault, he said, his voice thick. You got him a chance. You gave him those 2 days. His family, they got to say goodbye. Because of you. Because you flew into that mess. He needed her to understand this. You have to know that. It matters. Maya listened and gave a slow, accepting nod. She didn't argue. She just let the words settle. The sound of a child's delighted squeal floated from the backyard, a sharp reminder of the world they were sitting just outside of. David gestured weakly back towards the house. How do you do this? He asked. How do you come to a barbecue after all that? Maya thought for a moment. Some days are harder than others, she admitted. The smell of certain fuels, the sound of a helicopter in a movie. It can take you right back. But you learn to breathe through it. You come to things like this because of it. Because the taste of a burger, the feel of the sun, the sound of kids playing, that's the whole point, isn't it? That's what we were trying to protect. It's not always easy to be here, in the peace, but it's important to try. David understood. He'd been trying to do the same thing, storing up the normal moments, like a squirrel storing nuts for winter. But he'd been doing it alone, carrying the past like a secret, heavy stone in his pocket. Talking to her, he felt the weight of that stone lessen. It was now a weight they were both aware of. What about your crew? He asked, turning the question back to her. The ones who were with you that day. The crew chief who said you weren't leaving. A shadow passed over Maya's face, a complicated mix of loyalty and sorrow. It's scattered, she said. We all got moved to different units, different bases. Time does that. The crew chief, he got out a year later. Last I heard, he's working on wind turbines out west. Living a quiet life. The medic, she's still in, I think. She was good, really good under pressure. She paused, and her expression turned more somber. My co-pilot from back then, he had a harder time. The things we saw, the things we did, it piled up on him. He's out now, too. We email sometimes. He's okay. Some days are okay for him. Others aren't. David heard what she wasn't saying. He knew that story. He'd seen it in the eyes of many good men and women. The war didn't end for everyone when they came home. For some, it just moved inside. A new feeling started to stir in him then, cutting through the shared sadness. It was a sense of purpose. For years, Sticky 6 had been a memory, a call sign from a dark day. Now it was people. It was this woman next to him, a crew chief working on windmills, a medic still serving, a co-pilot fighting his own battles. They weren't just a faceless part of the machine that had saved his men. They were individuals who had done an extraordinary thing and then had to go live ordinary lives, carrying the same invisible scars he did. He didn't say anything more about it just then, but the idea took root in his mind. The conversation under the tree wasn't an end. It felt, for the first time in a long time, like a beginning. The barbecue was winding down. The sun had dropped low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. The scent of charcoal was fading, replaced by the cool, sweet smell of evening. David and Maya walked back from under the oak tree, side by side, but the silence between them was different now. It wasn't the shocked, heavy quiet from before. It was a comfortable, exhausted quiet, like two people who have just finished moving a great weight together. Back on the patio, people were starting to gather plates and empty cups. His friend who had introduced them earlier caught his eye and gave him a curious, slightly concerned look. David just nodded back, a small gesture that said, "Asterisk, it's okay. Everything's fine." Asterisk Maya picked up her bag from a chair. "I should probably get going," she said. Her voice was soft, a little tired. "Yeah," David said. He felt a sudden, surprising reluctance to let the conversation end. This connection, so raw and real, felt fragile. He was afraid it might vanish with the last of the party guests. "Look," he began, stumbling over his words a little. Thank you. For talking, for—" He didn't know how to finish. "For saving my men? For sharing the weight? For existing?" Maya seemed to understand. She gave him that same small, genuine smile from under the tree. "It was good to meet you, David, really." She reached into her bag and pulled out a simple pen and an old receipt. She scribbled something on the back. "This is my email," she said, handing it to him. "It's not a big social thing. I don't really do all that. But it works." He took the crumpled piece of paper, holding it carefully. It felt more important than any official document he'd ever been handed. "I'd like that," he said. "To stay in touch." She nodded, and with a final wave to the host, she walked down the driveway and was gone. For the rest of the evening, David moved through the cleanup in a daze. He helped carry folding chairs. He bagged up trash, but his mind was 1,000 miles away and 3 years in the past. Yet it was also right there, on that piece of paper in his pocket. He kept touching it, a tangible link to a ghost that had just become a person. Later that night, back in the quiet of his own apartment, the familiar shadows of the past felt different. They were still there, the memories of the ambush, the loss of Michael, the roar of the helicopter. But they didn't feel quite as dark or as lonely. Someone else remembered the exact shade of the dust in that valley. Someone else knew the specific pitch of the radio static that day. The burden hadn't disappeared, but it was no longer his to carry alone. He sat at his small kitchen table with his laptop. He stared at the blank screen for a long time. Then, slowly, he took the receipt from his pocket and smoothed it out. He typed in the email address. The subject line was hard. He started and deleted several. Hi from the BBQ seemed ridiculous. Thank you felt too small. Finally, he just wrote what was true. That day in Sangan. He began typing. He didn't write a formal letter. He just wrote thoughts as they came to him. Asterisk Maya. Asterisk, asterisk, it was strange driving home tonight. The world looks the same, but it feels different. I keep thinking about what you said, about your crew chief saying, "We are not leaving them." I never knew that. I was so focused on getting my guys to you. I never thought about what it was like to be inside that helicopter waiting for us. I think I needed to know that. It makes the memory more human. I guess. Asterisk, asterisk, I wanted to tell you that the sergeant from Texas, the big guy, his name is John. I sent him a message tonight, just to check in. I hadn't done that in a while. So thank you for that too. Asterisk, asterisk, I hope it was okay, running into me like that. It must have been a shock. Asterisk, asterisk, David. Asterisk. He read it over then, before he could second guess himself. He hit send. The reply didn't come that night. He didn't really expect it to. But the next morning, as he was drinking his coffee, a new email notification popped up. His heart did a little flip. The subject line was simple. Asterisk, asterisk, re. That day in Sangan. Asterisk, 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 David. Asterisk, asterisk, it was more than okay. It was good. I've thought about you and your Marines more times than I can count. To put a face to the voice on the radio. It helps. It closes a loop. Asterisk, asterisk, I'm glad you reached out to your sergeant. Tell him Sticky Six says hello. He probably won't remember, but that's all right. Asterisk, asterisk, my old crew chief. His name is Leo. I emailed him after the barbecue. Just told him I'd met a Marine from that October mission in Sangin. He wrote back right away. He remembered it, every detail. He said to tell you he's glad some of your guys made it. He meant it. Stay in touch, Maya. Asterisk David read the email 3 times. Leo, the crew chief, had a name. The medic and the co-pilot had names too. They were no longer just roles in a story. They were people scattered across the country, living their lives, but forever connected by one terrible, transcendent afternoon. He finished his coffee, a new resolve solidifying with each sip. His leave was almost over. Soon he'd be back on base, back in the rhythm of training and command. But he had a new mission now, a quiet, personal one. He opened his email again. He found an old message from John, the Texas sergeant. He hit reply. Asterisk John. Asterisk, asterisk, good to hear from you last night. I have a strange story to tell you. Remember that medevac bird that pulled you out of Sangin? The one called Sticky Six? I met the pilot. At a barbecue of all places. Asterisk, as he typed, he realized he wasn't just telling a story. He was weaving a thread that connected John to Maya, to Leo the crew chief, to the memory of Michael. A thread that connected all of them, the saved and the saviors, across time and distance. The war had torn so many things apart: lives, families, peace of mind. It had left everyone involved with pieces of a broken picture. David had spent years staring at his own jagged fragment, full of loss and guilt. But talking to Maya showed him he only had one piece. She had another. Leo had another. John had another. His new mission wasn't about fighting. It was about finding. It was about reaching out, piece by piece, and seeing if the broken picture could be put back together into something that made sense. Not to erase the bad, but to finally, fully honor the good, the courage, the sacrifice, the sheer human decency that had happened in the middle of the hell. He looked at Maya's email on the screen. For the first time in a very long time, the future didn't just feel like something to get through. It felt like something to build. The return to base was always a shift. The noisy, colorful chaos of civilian life was replaced by the structured order of the military world. The hum of traffic became the rumble of heavy vehicles. The smell of cut grass gave way to the sense of diesel fuel, polish, and clean concrete. For David, it usually felt like putting on an old, heavy coat familiar, but with a weight to it. This time, it was different. The weight was still there, but it sat on his shoulders in a new way. He wasn't just carrying his own memories anymore. He was carrying a connection. That piece of receipt paper with Maya's email was tucked into his wallet, a quiet secret next to his identification cards. He got settled back into his office, the paperwork and planning waiting for him. But in the evenings, after duty, his personal mission began. He started with John, the sergeant from Texas. He called him, not just messaged him. Hearing the man's voice, loud and warm and full of life, telling stories about his little girls, was a powerful thing. David told him the whole story of the barbecue. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then John's voice came back, thicker. Sticky Six, he murmured. I'll be darned. I remember the sound of that bird. I don't remember much else from right then, but I remember that sound coming closer. Tell her thank you from me and my family. She gave me the years to have this family. That message, simple and direct, was the first thread David tied. He emailed it to Maya. She wrote back a single line. Asterisk, that's what it was all for. Please tell him he's welcome. Asterisk encouraged. David dug deeper. He used the network he had, the quiet conversations with other veterans and support staff. He wasn't asking for official records. He was asking for people. Do you know a medic who served with Army medevac crews around that time? A really good one, unshakable. He reached out to a friend who worked in veterans advocacy. I'm trying to find a former crew chief named Leo. Worked on wind turbines now, maybe out west. It was slow work, filled with dead ends and vague memories. But he was a Marine, and he understood patience and persistence. Meanwhile, he and Maya kept writing. The emails were never long. They were like brief notes passed across a great distance. She wrote about her life now, working as a consultant for an aviation company. She mentioned she'd heard from Leo more often lately, that he seemed happy to be remembering the good parts of their service, not just the hard stuff. David wrote about the challenges of training new officers, about the pride he felt in his unit. They shared small things, a funny movie they'd seen, a good book. It was normal, everyday stuff, but it was built on a foundation of something extraordinary. They were building a friendship in the present, on the shared ground of a painful past. After a few weeks, his friend in veterans advocacy called. I think I found your medic. Her name is Chloe. She's out now, living up north. She's a nurse in a busy city hospital. I heard she's one of the best in the ICOM under pressure. They say. He passed along an email address. With the warning that she might not respond, David stared at the email. Address, Chloe, the medic who had worked on Michael. On John, in the back of that shaking helicopter. He composed a message carefully, introducing himself, mentioning Maya and Leo and that October mission. He didn't expect a quick reply. To his surprise, her answer came 2 days later. It was professional, but there was a tremor of emotion underneath. Asterisk Captain Cross. Asterisk Maya told me you might be in touch. I remember Sangin. I remember your corporal. We did everything we could. I've thought of him often. I work in an A now. Sometimes, when we save someone against the odds, I think of that flight. It's good to know your sergeant made it, and is well. That matters. Thank you for reaching out. Chloe. Another thread, tied. Another person brought back into the circle. David felt a deep sense of rightness. He shared Chloe's message with Maya, who wrote back simply, I'm glad. She was the best of us. The hardest one was the co-pilot. Maya had been vague, protective. David understood. He asked gently in an email if it would be okay for him to try to reach the man, whose name was Alex. Maya's reply was cautious. He's in a better place now, but it's fragile. I'll ask him. A month passed. Then Maya forwarded an email. The subject line was blank. The message was short. Captain. Maya says it's okay to write to you. I remember the day. I remember the fire. I'm glad some of your men lived. I'm sorry for the one we lost. Alex. It wasn't much, but it was everything. It was an acknowledgement. David wrote back a short, kind note, expressing his gratitude, emphasizing that their courage had given his men a fighting chance. He didn't expect another reply, and he didn't get one. But the thread was there, held gently. Almost a year after the barbecue, David sat in his office. On his desk was not just the usual pile of manuals and reports. Tucked in the corner was a small framed photograph. It wasn't a military photo. It was a picture of a barbecue sent by his friend from that very day. In it, David was laughing, caught mid-conversation with the group, Maya just a blurry figure beside him, smiling. You couldn't hear the life-changing words that would soon be spoken. It was just a moment of normal happiness before the past came rushing in. He looked at it often. It reminded him that the two worlds, the brutal and the peaceful, were not separate. They were woven together in every person who had been there. He had an email open on his screen. It was a group thread he had started. The recipients were Maya, Leo, Chloe, and John. He wrote to them every few months, just a simple update. Sometimes it was about a promotion in his unit. Sometimes it was just an article he thought they'd find interesting. Leo had written last time about the incredible quiet he found working high up on the wind turbines. Chloe had shared a story about a young patient who had recovered against the odds. John sent pictures of his daughters. They were not a formal group. They would probably never all be in the same room together. But they were a crew again. In a way. A crew bound not by a single mission, but by its lasting echo. The joke that led to Sticky Six had done more than make him freeze. It had thawed something inside him that he thought was frozen forever. It had replaced a haunting, solitary memory with a living, breathing network of people. The loss was still there. The grief for Michael would always be a part of him. But now it was surrounded by other things, by gratitude, by connection, by the quiet knowledge that courage creates bonds that time and distance can't break. He was still a Marine captain. He still had duties and battles to fight, both on and off the field. But now he also had this other, quieter purpose, to be a keeper of the thread. A reminder to them all that what they did together on a terrible day in October had mattered, and that they didn't have to carry it alone. It was the most important mission he'd ever been given, and it had started with a simple, joking question at a summer barbecue.